All right. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. This is the first meeting of the new year. So happy new year, everybody. If you haven't heard happy new year from me yet. The topic tonight is going to be on Bun. So let's go ahead and get this started. So I want to start off by saying we are always looking for speakers. We have a pretty good crowd out tonight. And the topic does not have to be Node.js specific, but I would like for it to be at least Node.js adjacent. So for instance, like if you're using like for Elixir as an example, like if you're building out like a microservice-based, architecture, so like you may use Node.js, but you also may have some stuff that's written in Golang, some stuff that's written in Elixir. So that's a perfect subject right there for presentations, like how you deployed your infrastructure. So we're always looking for stuff like that. It could be a new technology, like tonight we're talking about Bun. It's not Node.js, but it's Node.js adjacent. So anyways, if you're interested in speaking, please let me know, and I'll get you lined up to speak. So upcoming topics, next month, we're going to be doing LangChain.js. So obviously over the last year, one of the things that's gotten a lot of attention has been on AI and machine learning, those types of subjects. We kind of focused on it a little bit meeting last year, but I'm going to kind of cover some of the broader strokes with what you can do with LangChain. So we'll be planning all kinds of topics around AI and JavaScript this year. And once again, if anybody has something that they want to have covered, this tonight was actually a request. Somebody wanted to hear about Bun, so that's why we're doing Bun tonight. And also, if there's anything specific you guys want to hear about, please let me know. So I'm open to suggestions as well.
How do we let you know?
Well, the easiest way is to reach out to me over the Meetup site. And there's a way you can contact the organizer there. I'm also on the Jax Tech Slack. I don't know if that's closed right now to do people or not, but I have
you can invite people if you have their email.
Okay, yeah.
The website where you can just add yourself is closed because we're getting a lot of bots and stuff.
Yeah.
You can still invite.
Yeah, so that's gonna be the next thing, is figure out how we can get people. It may have to be alternative to Slack, I guess. But at my previous company, I was blocked from accessing what was it? Discord, yeah. Anyways, my name is David Fecky. For those that don't know, I have a blog you can get to by going to feck.io/blog, and I talk about these subjects on my my blog. I also have a YouTube channel. It's called the Polyglot Engineer. And I do videos also on these subjects. My GitHub page is github.com/David Fecky. This repo actually is not going to be up there. It's going to be on the Jax Node repo. And then I also, I guess it's not tweeting anymore. It's post on x.com with the Jax Node handle and the Polyglot Engine 1 channel. And I am available for work. So if anybody wants to hire me, I'm available right now. Nobody is paying me to do anything right now. So I'm available for work. All right, so before we get started with this, I just want to go through a kind of quick history on JavaScript. And for those who don't know, it was created in Netscape. It's written by Britton Ike over a 2-week period. So if there's things you don't like about JavaScript, it's probably because it was developed over 2 weeks. Then there's the browser wars between Netscape and Internet Explorer. Microsoft basically copied all the JavaScript features, including the bugs, when they did IE. So a lot of the reasons, like something else that you may not like in JavaScript, might have been because Microsoft copied the bugs. But one of the big advances came in 2009 when Google released Chrome, which is based off of WebKit, and they introduced the V8 JavaScript engine. And the other thing that was really cool about this is they open sourced the entire project, right? So that meant that other people could take the V8 JavaScript engine and use it in their own projects. And that's when Ryan Dahl created Node.js, also in 2009. And so this is a huge advance because before there were ways you could actually run JavaScript on the server or the desktop, but it wasn't a very fast, didn't have a very good developer or user experience because it was slow. V8 changed all that. And then more recently, I'd say maybe about 4 years ago, Ryan Dahl started working on a new project called Dino, which was to fix all the mistakes he says he made in Node.js. And so that started to become a popular project. There's definitely some differences between Node and Dino as far as the way you bring in modules and packages into your projects, and they treat security a little bit differently. But they've been making a lot of inroads and trying to improve essentially the backwards compatibility between Dino and Node. And then 2 years ago, Bun was started as a project. So that brings us to runtime. So Node.js, it's a C++ project. V8's also a C++ project. And Dino was a little bit different. Dino was started as a Golang project, which also used V8, which is a C++ project. And then it was rewritten more recently in Rust. So now it's a Rust and C++ project. Bun is actually written in a language called Zig, and it uses WebKit. And one of the things that's interesting about WebKit is that Apple has made a lot of investments in WebKit to try to make it the fastest browser and the JavaScript engine. And also have a very fast JavaScript engine. Another thing too that we use quite a bit in this ecosystem is package managers. And so npm was the original package manager that shipped with Node.js. There were a lot of complaints about npm over the years, but the project itself, the hosted modules, they have well over 2 million modules. I think it's approaching 3 million modules on npm. And then a while ago, actually, a couple other competing package managers came out. Yarn, PNPM are alternative modules, and they did some things that npm didn't do, like caching. And then just over the years, there's actually been a lot of improvements. And so I believe now if you do a speed comparison between npm and Yarn, initially Yarn was a faster tool than npm, but I believe that npm is actually now faster than the Yarn. And now that whole project is owned by Microsoft. So if you go to npmjs.com, that's all owned by Microsoft now. But Bun aims to be the fastest package manager as well. Which brings me to my meme of the night. It's a JavaScript runtime. It's a package manager. It's a bundler. You get it? It's all three things. So it's also a test runner as well. So what exactly is Bun? So as I mentioned before, Bun's written in Zig. It is a JavaScript runtime like Node.js. It's also a bundler. It's also a module installer. And it uses a JavaScript core JavaScript engine, the same engine that's in Safari. And there's some pluses and minuses with that, which I'll get into later. And it's very, very fast. It's faster than Node or Deno. So who's this Jared Sumner guy? So Jared Sumner, he was a Thiel Fellow. Does everybody know what a Thiel Fellow is? Ever heard of that before? So has everybody here heard of a company called Meta or Facebook? No? Okay. So anyways, one of I think the original like seed investor for Facebook was this guy, Peter Thiel. He was also one of the people that started PayPal. And he is prescribed to this idea that if you have really smart people that are in college, rather than have them waste, the rest of their, 3 or 4 year, time in college, you could actually be going and working in a startup. And so what he's been doing is he's been giving select individuals, like say, I think like $100,000 or whatever, to start companies. And Jared Sumner was one of those people that he gave $100,000 to. I think this was like 10 years ago. He started a couple other companies and projects, but he started Bun back in 2022. Yes, so about 2 years ago, and it's all covered under a parent organization called Oven.sh. So Bun and Oven. All right. And they actually went 1.0 end of last year. And so I did a presentation last year where I kind of briefly, or maybe actually might have been actually the year before. I had a part of a presentation where I brought up Bun that it had been kind of released as like a beta or alpha project. And so when somebody initially went to me and said, hey, let's do something on Bun. It's like, well, I already did something on Bun. And I went back and took a look at what I did on Bun. It was like very, very minimal. It might have been like one or two slides. And so you're getting the full Bun effect tonight. All right. So what are some of the design goals? Speed is one of the design goals. They also have TypeScript and JSX support built into the tool as well. And they also have ESM and CommonJS compatibility. They offer web standard APIs. And like I was saying before, this could be used as a bundler and a package manager, as well as a JavaScript runtime. And they claim that it's a drop-in replacement for Node.js.
False.
False. Okay. So speed, why is speed important? So, V8 brought JavaScript out of the 90s performance realm, right? And that was a big changer because, really, if you want to run servers and stuff using JavaScript, previous to that, it really wasn't fast enough to do that. JavaScript is still not as fast or as efficient as native code. And so anything that we can do to try to improve or improve the speed of JavaScript, we should take seriously. JavaScript and TypeScript are, extremely productive languages. And so some people, might be, very productive, writing, server code in, Rust or Go. But JavaScript, I think, has a lower barrier to entry than some of those other languages. So bundling and transportation times are also important in dev productivity as well as developer experience. And so if you have a large enough project and you're having to do, transpile and build and stuff like that, I have a couple of websites that I've built using Gatsby.js. And that's, all the tooling for that's all JavaScript based. And it takes, if you've got a big enough project, it takes forever to do builds and stuff like that. So anything that you can do to improve speed is always good. And this is, I think, another important point that I think a lot of people kind of miss. We were talking a little bit earlier before the meeting started about Vercel and AWS, and one of the things that's important to keep in mind when you are cloud-based, you're using cloud-based hosting, you're paying for everything, right? You're paying for memory, you're paying for CPU cycles, you're paying for storage. So anything you can do to improve the speed, memory usage, that's all important. Yeah, because you're paying for that. And there was a company that started, I'd say maybe about 7 or 8 years ago called Rander. Does anybody remember a company called Rander? They don't exist anymore. They didn't have a business model where they could make money. But they were doing some very innovative things. They were microservice based, and they started off as being a Node.js shop. So they started writing all their servers in Node.js, all as microservices. And one of the things they ran into, or one of the engineers ran into, was it's like they had this one service that was taking 50 megabytes to run in that one service. And so he went back and rewrote it in Golang. And that one service went from taking 50 megabytes to running in 2 megabytes. So he was able to get that much of a memory improvement by just rewriting this one microservice in Golang over JavaScript. So you're paying for everything, and that's why I bring that up. Anything you can do to improve CPU cycles, memory, and stuff like that, that's important, especially when it comes to cloud-based hosting. So how do you install this? Well, right now it's mostly a Mac and Linux tool. They do have a Windows beta right now, but one of the things I will say for Windows, I don't know how many people here use Windows. How many people here are using Windows?
My company
Wow.
just shipped me a cyber.
Okay, one person.
ransomware.
2 people. You're using, you don't count, okay.
I have a.
Okay, all right, so
Not connected.
Play online games.
there you go. All right. So for development, I I had another MacBook previous to this one, and my nephew accidentally spilled coffee all over it. It was a wonderful, wonderful laptop, and I took it in to try to get it fixed, and it's like, do you realize our repair office smells like coffee now? So what I wound up doing, just for the time being, is, I just got like a used Dell laptop, and it'd been a couple of years since I'd used Windows, and so I had previously had another Windows machine where I had installed WSL, which is the Windows system subsystem for Linux. And at that time, I didn't really find it that usable. This time around, over the last year, I found it to be very, very usable. And so one of the things you can do if you're using WSL is you can actually install Bun under WSL. It runs just like a Linux application. So if you're using Windows and you're afraid that you can't use Bun, you can use Bun under WSL.
WSL2, which is probably what you're.
Yes.
Is great
Yes.
for Windows. But the thing that trips people up is they start looking at guides and tutorials for Windows.
Yes.
It's not, you really have to go all in on WSL and kind of understand what you're doing. So it's not very beginner friendly, but otherwise, I totally agree. If you have to use Windows machine.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm in love with WSL too. That being said, I just did buy a Mac. So you can install it using curl, npm, homebrew, Docker. There's a number of different ways you can install it. The easiest way is just to use the curl command, this curl command that I'm showing right here, and it'll install it right there on your machine. So there's a bunch of really cool built-in features, built-in modules. So they have a bun.serve module, which is how they do HTTP servers. They have one for doing builds. It's called bun.build. They also have a file IO one. So they have a bun.file and bun.write functions that you can use. And they also have SQLite built into the tool as well. So that's something I kind of like. They also have FFI functionality. That's the foreign function interface. So if you have native code you need to be able to interact with, you can do that using the built-in module. And they also have a Node API as well. So we'll get into a little bit more about that when we start talking about Node compatibility. All right. They also have a lot of web modules, so they support like all the web standard stuff like the fetch API, the Board controller, web workers, web sockets, and crypto. They do have a crypto library. They also support set timeouts at interval as well. As far as language support goes, obviously they support JavaScript, but you can also do transpilation with your JSX, your TypeScript, and your TSX. They also have support where you can use CommonJS and ES modules, but you can do it in the same file, right? So technically in Node, you can actually do that in the same file as well, but you have to import the require when you're using the module syntax. But this is all, you can just start using imports and requires all in the same file using Bun. So that's kind of a neat feature. And they support essentially all the same JavaScript features that are available in JavaScript core. So as far as the CLI commands go, if you want to run anything, if you have a script that you want to run, and your script, let's say, is called index.js, you can just say bun run index.js and it'll execute that code. For creating new packages, you can do bun init and now create a new package. They also have bun create for creating new packages, and you can create packages based off of templates. And they also have a bun build command, which you transpile and bundle your code as well. There's some interesting bugs in there, which I'll demonstrate later. The package manager works very similar to the way npm's install works. You can use bun add to add any dependencies that you want. You can remove any dependencies by just doing bun remove. And you can update modules by using bun update. And they also have a bun link command, which will take your module and make it publicly available through your environment. And all these commands are faster than other package managers. And then they also have a PM command. So if you need to get the path of the bin directory or list all the modules, you can do that using this command. They also give you the caching directory that you can use, and you can remove the cache using this subcommand as well. So for bundling stuff up, they actually have a bundler that's inspired by the ES build tool. And all you have to do is simply point to an entry point, and any files that are included in that file will automatically get rolled up into your output. And you specify an output directory, and you can even set up targets in there. So that's handy. And they also have a bund.build function that will bundle your project, so you can use that as well. They also have a test runner that's built into it as well. And so it's a JS compatible runner. It looks for files that have a .test or .spec or underscore test or underscore spec in the name. And then to run it, all you have to do is say bun test, and it'll run any tests that you have in your project. Plugins. So they have a full plugin API. Essentially what the plugin API lets you do is extend the runtime in the bundler. This can all be added in a TOML file. It's called the bunfig.toml file. And then you can use plugin loaders to add support for additional file extensions. So right out of the bat, like one of the things that's probably missing from Bun is some of the style sheet based packagers. And so you can extend it using this plugin API. And this is an example here. So here's an example of a plugin for loading Svelte. So if you want to do Svelte and compile your Svelte code, you can do that using this example plugin here. So performance. So if you look at these are what I call marking numbers. But you'll see here that they have an example here on the left for server-side rendering of React. They have 13,967, but Bun 1.0 can do 66,000. And then they also show Dino in there, so Dino is kind of in between. They did the same thing here for the a WebSocket chat server, and they also have one here for, I hate not having a mouse. Hold on a second. What do I do? Hold on. All right. And then they have this this information on their website here where they compare bundling performance with Webpack and Rollup, Parcel2, RSPack, ESBuild. And so you can see the Webpack, this part doesn't really surprise me that much. Webpack is really, really slow. So for this one project they did here, it took 38 seconds for Webpack to bundle everything up. And then Bun was able to do it in 0.17 seconds.
I'd be really curious to know where Vite falls.
Where what falls in that? Oh, Vite? Yeah, I'd be curious too, because I didn't have it. Vite. So there's a number of Node tools now that are written in, they're really not written in Node, they're written in Rust. And I think in terms of there's another TypeScript tool. It's the one that's part of Next.js. Vercel built. It's a Rust.
Turbo repo and turbo.
Well, that too, but there is a blanking on the name of it. But there's essentially a TypeScript compiler they rewrote in Rust. So,
I think it's turbo.
well, TurboPack, I believe, is their replacement for Webpack, and so so it's probably part of the tooling for TurboPack, and that's still, I mean, that's still kind of like a work in progress. It looks like it's going to have really good performance, but it's not. I don't think they've said that it's ready for prime time yet. So we were talking a little bit earlier about Node compatibility, and one of the claims is that it is a complete drop-in replacement for Node.js. what you're going to find is that most APIs will work just fine with Node. Stuff like the file system, the HTTP modules are supported. So while Bun has their own modules that are most likely faster than the essentially the node-based modules, they do support those modules because they're trying to make it as compatible as possible with the Node ecosystem. Most of the frameworks will just work: Express, Koa, SvelteKit, Next, Bytes. Well, there's one caveat. So if you're using one of these new frameworks like Next or Remix, for example, which are React-based frameworks, which will let you do essentially server-side rendering, the client-side rendering you're not going to have any problems with. But there are issues. I don't think that the essentially the JSX-based server components, I don't think those are working yet. So that's still a work in progress. But Vite is also supported. So like I said before, there's I think it was Nest was the one I was thinking of. I said that was supported. So there's partial support for Next.js and Remix. But that being said, any modules that you want to run under Bun, I would test thoroughly for compatibility. And they actually do have pretty good documentation under their docs under runtime on all the different Node.js APIs, and where things are green and there's things that are in yellow and there's things that are red, which means they just don't work yet. So let's talk a little bit about V8 and JavaScript core. So Node originally adopted V8, and V8 releases were not initially tied to Node releases. And so initially Node was this kind of side project, and V8 was tightly coupled with the Chrome browser. And then at some point, I'm not sure how long ago, they decided that they were going to release V8 in parallel with not just Chrome, but also with Node.js. Now, when the V8 team does a new release of V8, not only does it have to work with Chrome, it also has to work with Node. And so they do a pretty thorough job making sure that V8 works with both the browser as well as the server. And there's a new release of V8 every 4 weeks. And that's usually incorporated into some version of Chrome as well as Node.js. And Bun uses a JavaScript core, which is coming through a WebKit fork, right? So just to kind of go through some history here. So Chrome initially was forked off of the WebKit project, and Safari is a fork of the WebKit project. So they have diverged. And Apple's made a lot of investment in JavaScript core to be really, really fast. It is faster than V8. But Apple releases a lot less frequently for WebKit. So that's something else to keep in mind. If you actually go to the WebKit source, and you can see how often Apple releases, updates to that source. What they do is they work on it internally at Apple, and then after a year or two, they will take what they've worked on and push it up to that branch. And so what they're doing at Bun, what they're doing at Oven, I should say, is they are actually they have forked the WebKit JavaScript core, and they are updating it and making changes to it. So I'm not sure how far they've diverged from what Apple is doing, because Apple kind of works in their own little bubble. But that's something to keep in mind, is that V8 is something that's always actively being worked on and supported by Google and a bunch of other companies now. Now they're basically working with a fork of JavaScript core from WebKit, Bun is. All right. So you use existing Node.js frameworks with Bun, but there's also some other ones you might want to take a look at. There's one that's called Hano. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. So it's either Hano or Ano. And then there's Lysia.js. And there's somebody that came up with something they're calling the Beth stack. So has everybody here heard of the Mern stack, right? Which is like Mongo, Express. So anyways, the Beth stack is Bun, Elysia.js, which is it's a framework similar to Elysia is similar to like Express. And then there's Terso and HTMX. So the idea is that you do your front end coding, would you use HTMX to do that? Then your backend database is going to be Terso. And then you use Elysia for doing the server side programming, and then you run it on top of Bun. So that's probably a good subject for a whole presentation by itself. So I just took a quick look at that today, as a matter of fact. And Terso is running on, I think it's called libcore, but it's essentially it is a fork of SQLite, right? So SQLite is, well, this is a fork, right? And I'm gonna do my best to try to describe how it works. But just so people know, SQLite, it's the same. It comes bundled with Bun, but also comes bundled on your iPhone or your Android phone. And if you're using, I think it's called, I forget what the name of the framework is. There's also one called Swift Data on the iOS platform, which is essentially just a wrapper around SQLite. And so there's a lot of stuff where you can run stuff locally, like on your machine or your device that's based off of SQLite, but generally it's never been something that's been used to power a server or service before that you use on the internet. The way that my understanding Terso works is that they use a replication system. So a lot of the stuff that you probably, has anybody heard the term edge? I'm not talking about the guitar player from U2. I'm talking about like you deploy stuff out to the edge, right? And so there's all these services and stuff that work very similar to like a CDN, but you can also host functions basically on these edge servers. So the idea is that when somebody hits up your application and it's deployed on, let's say, Vercel, for example, there's stuff that they can host and run. And I think this is one of the selling points of Vercel as well. Like if you're hosting like a Next.js site, as an example, they will try to set it up so that when you are essentially executing server code, it tries to execute that code as close to the user as possible, right? So what Terso is doing is they are also deploying SQLite as a service to these edge servers. And I forget what the number is. They have literally like, thousands of them all over the world. But the idea is that as a user, for doing your reads, right, what it's doing is it's replicating one central data store to all these SQLite databases all over the world. So you are getting the data essentially as quickly as you possibly can by getting it from the edge. But there's still a central place. This is one of the tricks with SQL, right? So the reason why SQL, I think, was successful is that they had this whole idea of data consistency, right? So you can replicate a database, but there's always a single source of truth with your database, right? And this is one of the things that makes it difficult to scale, SQL servers like Postgres or MySQL or MariaDB, is that in order to scale them, so you still have to have one disk where all the data is stored, or it can be, it can be clustered and broken up, but it's still, there's this one central source of truth. And so the way Terso works is that they still have that one central source of truth, but what they're doing is for all the reads, they have all that replicated out over the edge. And I haven't played with it, so I don't know how realistic that is. They claim that it's a game-changing, service, but I haven't played with it myself to see if it's something that I would consider using. So
That's a whole talk.
that's a whole nother topic, and I probably wasted too much time on it. But it's part of this Beth stack. But the thing is, you can kind of pick and choose, what tools and frameworks you want to use. You don't have to use it. You can use Postgres if you want to use it. So Elysia, I use the acronym JF at JF. I'll let you figure out what that stands for. And it's supposed to be an ergonomic framework for building backend servers like Express or Fastify. And so it includes, performance, type safety, with TypeScript and JSX support. And it complies with the WinterCG Web Interoperability or Operable Runtimes Community Group. And so I was just talking about the edge, and basically what that means is that all these companies and stuff that are providing hosting services where they allow you to run functions on the edge, the WinterCG that's the governing body that decides what JavaScript features they're going to support, what JavaScript features they're not going to support. So that's what that means. So I think it's time for a quick demo. All right, let me do this. All right, so I have a project here, and let me go ahead and open this up in VS Code. All right. So before I do that, let me do this real quickly. I'm going to create a new folder. And let's come over here. I want to say fun. Let me do this. Demo folder. All right. So I've created this folder. It is blank. There's nothing. Oops. There's nothing in there. So I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna say fun init. And it's going ahead and walk me through the process. This is very similar if you're doing an npm init-y, but it's just going to pick the folder name for the package name. It's going to pick an entry point. And now it's done. So if I come over here and I type in code. So this is essentially the folder structure that it's created. And so you come right here, you can see that it went ahead and automatically created a index.ts. And it's got a package.json, just like you'd see in a Node.js project. And it also comes with a TS config as part of the process as well. And they even include a README in there, which shows how to install stuff. So I am going to open up the terminal here. Oops. All right. So what's the thing? So we do have this program in here called index.js. So I'm just going over here. I'm going to say bun run index.js TS. And we can see here that runs just like we'd expect. But I'm just going to make a quick change here. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a variable. And let's say const message. And then for this is TypeScript, I'm going to say hello TypeScript. All right. And now I'm going to take that message. Actually, let's do this. Put some tick marks in there. All right. All right, so now I've got this message in here. And if I go to run this again, we get this new message here. But if I come over here and I can say bun build index.ts, and I can say out directory, and I'll just say dest. And we can see right there, it just went ahead and it built that. And it created it basically just transpiled that into JavaScript and it set it up right there in dest. So that was pretty easy, right? So that brings us to the demo project I have here. And so for this demo project, this is basically running the same thing, but I have some additional examples in here. So this is an example of a server. Can everybody read that okay? Because it's kind of small. I can blow it up. All right, it's all right. So this is the bun.serve function. And so you can see right here, I didn't have to import any modules in order to use this. I can just set this up and run this. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Let me do this. I'll say bun run server.ts. And now if I go out to a browser and I say, oops, localhost 3000, voila. It just echoed out the the address there. All right, we go back to. So you can see it's very easy to create servers based off of that. I also have an example of a Hano server here. So we're just talking about Ano or Ano, however you pronounce that. And so this has an API that's very similar to Express. So I'm gonna go ahead and run that as well. No, this is it right here. So now I come back and let's refresh that. And then voila, it's running the Ano. And then I also have an example here. Let me quit this. I also have an example here of Elysia. Here's the Elysia demo. This one's a little bit different. So one of the things that's neat about Elysia is that you can output HTML, you can output JSX. So in this example right here, I'm actually outputting JSX. You can also pass in parameters to do like an API, like a REST-based API. So I'm gonna go ahead and run that one next. So now if I come over here, back out, try running that. Now I've got a hello.js node, and I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna run this as JSX instead. And so here's the JSX, a little bit different here. And I can also call APIs. So I'm gonna say ID / these numbers. And now it just outputs some JSON based off of that route there. So you can see it's very easy to come in here and create a server-based web application. And that's the neat part. That's the easy part. They also have some examples here of like a file reader, as an example. And so what I did is I have in this project here, I've got a DAT file that's got a list of all of the airports in the world that have weather reporting. And if I come down here to this file reader, I'm actually using the Bun file API to load that up. So I'm creating this variable here called airports, which is just using the bun.file with a direct reference to that file. And then there's some metadata that I can get off of that. But I can also come over here and I can say await airports.text. And what that'll do is it will essentially call a promise on that airports object that returns all the text from that file. And that's the way you can read that in. And then I have a couple other variables I'm setting up where I'm taking that and I'm splitting it up, and then I'm putting it into an object and then doing a search on that. So let's try running that real quick, see what happens. This is just using Bun to do all the file reads. So this is all gonna be in the console here. So let's do Bun run file reader. TS. And we can see here that just returned back the airport that I fly out of, which is Jacksonville Executive at Craig. So that's working. And then one of the other examples I put in here, which I thought was kind of neat, was the ability to work with SQLite directly with Bun. So I have the script here that what it's doing is it's getting a reference to SQLite, to a database here that's called mydb.sqlite. And right here, I have it set up to read only for true. And then what I've done is I've defined a pet object using TypeScript. And then what I'm doing is I'm doing a select star from pets to try to get those, the name and the age from the pets out. And so if I come over here and try running this, I'm going to say cd into my database folder, and I'm going to run read database. And there I just returned all the data out of that. And I also have an example here of how to create the database and populate it with those values. And so they did a pretty good job having this documented out on their website as well. And Then I have an example here where we're using FFI. So they have an example here of where you can go and take a look at the SQLite version that you're running here. And what I'll do is it will use DL open to open it up and call that. But what I thought would be neater is actually write some native code and then call that from an example. So what I did, see if I can find the file here. Yeah, so I have this add function that I created in Rust. So this is just using the public string C to make this essentially available as a C function that you could use with FFI. And it's just taking in, you know, two variables and adding them together. And then if I come down here to this FFI Rust example, you can see what I'm doing here is I'm actually importing in the bun FFI module. And then I am using DL open to open that up. And I'm specifying what the arguments are in the return type. And then it's going to call that and give a result. So I'm going to come right over here and say run FFI Rust add. Yes. Oh, that's not going to work because I'm in the wrong folder. All right, let's try that again. Yes, I did. That's right. That's why you are here. And so tells me that when you add 1 to 2, you get 3. So it's a good use case for using a native code in your application. And so the last thing I was going to show here is I have this builder.js, and this is actually using the bun runtime here. And what this will do is it will take these files here, and if you want to, you can just put in one endpoint, but you can put multiple entry points in here. So what it'll do is it'll take all these TypeScript files, and then when you go to run this, it's going to essentially do the same thing I used with the bun build command. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm going to run this builder. And we can see that if I come over here, over to this dist file, we can see that we have all these files here. So now, what's interesting about this is if I want to come in here and let's say I want to add a file here. So I created this Elysia server here, right? This Elysia demo. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back in here and I am going to add this in here. So I'm gonna say Elysia demo dot ts. There we go. All right. So let me try running that again, see what happens. As a matter of fact, to show there's nothing up my sleeve, I'm gonna come over to this distribution folder here, and I'm gonna delete that. All right. So let me try running this again, see what happens. Nothing happened. That's odd. I wonder why. Nope. Let's try running this again. I'm gonna move this out of here. I'm gonna try running that Elysia demo again, see what happens. Nothing happens. So I was curious about this myself. It's like, why?
It is TSX. There's a red one.
What's it saying here? I'm not so sure. I don't think that's correct. In other words, I think this is a false error. This is
TSX though. The file's TSX. That's what he was saying. Is that the problem?
Oh, you're right. Let me try that again. Let me try this again. I'm gonna add TSX and see what happens. That is correct. Okay, let me try that again. All right. And still no dist folder, right? So I was curious about this myself. I was like, why is that happening? So I'm gonna come over back to my terminal here. And let's go back into the bun demo. All right. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna use that bun build command again. I'm gonna say bun build, Elysia demo TSX, out directory, And I'm gonna say Lysia demo. I'm just gonna say dist. Ah, it failed, right? And it failed because of this, it sees this timers promises, right? So what's happening is that it's going out and it's trying to include any modules that I've included, and it's trying to put that, make that part of the bundle, right? And so what I found, and then this may be correctable by changing some of the parameters on how you're doing your bundling. But what I found was that there's some modules, there's some APIs and stuff that you can use that are considered to be like bun specific or server specific. That if you try to bundle that using the bundler, it just fails. It won't let you build it. And that kind of brings me to my my next point here.
Why did it say that? When you were running it before?
That would have been nice. That would have been a good developer experience, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. So it didn't. I had to play around with it to figure out what was going on, right? So that brings me to my next slide here. So let's kind of quickly kind of summarize what I learned from playing around with it with Bun. It's definitely faster than NPM, Node, or Deno. The bundler is definitely buggy, right? And this is like one of the things they're kind of using to try to sell the project is that, you know, it's fast for doing all this stuff, but you're going to find that there's certain APIs and certain things that are buggy. Many of the Node APIs are incomplete. And like I said before, they actually do a pretty good job in their documentation talking about what will work and won't work. And so a perfect example of that is JWT. Now, so when they released this about a couple months ago, JWT, it's a kind of a standard Node module, it does use some Node crypto modules in it. And when they initially tried to use that or bundle that with Bun, it just didn't work. But what people have done is they've gone and done their own implementations that will run on Bun with JWT. So there is a workaround for specifically with JWT, especially with like Elysia, like they have their own implementation of JWT that you can use with Elysia. So is it a drop-in replacement for Node? No. They say it is, but it's not a drop-in replacement for Node.
The build command you were using?
Yes.
It returns a result that, it returns a build result.
It should.
You can look at the log, that would give you the.
Let's do that right now. As an example here.
So you have to manually.
So you can do like const result equals that. And then, below you can say like for, and then, you can pull a message out of result.logs. And,
Let's give that a try.
yeah, just, you can do result.logs, but result will give you.
Voila. Same thing.
Surprised they don't just throw an error and then you see in the console that's an unhandled error.
I think you could use there's a use case where you, since it's promise based, that you do want to use the result on that. I do a lot of iOS programming, and they use there's a type in the iOS ecosystem called the result type, which is essentially it's a templated protocol that you can use where you can define basically what you actually want your result to look like, but also an error. So if there's ever an error, you can check for that first and handle it however you want to handle it. But if there is no error, then you just take the result and use the result. It's very similar to if you think about like error first callbacks. It has that same kind of idea, but it's not necessarily promise-based API. So let's see here. Oops. So I think I covered most of these already. I don't consider it to be a drop-in replacement for Node, but there's definitely, I think, use cases where you can use it. And one of the things I've been doing, like for, I mean, a lot of the desktop or server side scripting that I've been doing, I've been using Bun lately just because it is faster. I think a lot of the people that use Node today, the reason why they use Node is because is a tool they use for doing bundling and transpiling, Webpack, that sort of thing. And so it may be fine for handling most of those roles. And it looks to me that the problem with the bundler is because it's trying to bundle server specific code instead of trying to bundle client specific code. And there is a browser setting that you can use with their build command. So there's different settings and stuff that I didn't really play with. I didn't have a chance to play with all the different build settings, but I definitely found the bundler to be buggy. So you could probably just deploy it as a server directly, just running the TS files directly or the JS files directly, but you wouldn't want to bundle them. So are there any questions?
So there's this company Oven.
Yes,
This is-
oven.sh, yes.
Or is it an open source?
I think I have not seen their I don't know if they're operating kind of like, OpenAI out of the goodness of their hearts, with a lot of money donated from, Bill Gates. But my understand, I think they're treating it as a open source product. They are hiring, at least at the time that they released, they were hiring systems level programmers to go through and implement some of these things that we're talking about tonight, these missing features and stuff, and Zig. So Zig's an interesting language. That's probably a whole topic on top of itself. And there's some, I think, good reasons why they chose Zig to be the language. And from what I can tell, it has a lot of features that's very similar to Rust in that respect. The idea is that they're making a system level language that's based off of that's supposed to be a replacement for C. Rust is supposed to be a replacement for C. But as far as what the business goals of Oven.sh, they may be doing something where, they sponsor the open source project, but maybe they're planning on some type of consulting business on top of that. Or they may be trying to operate solely as I think the Linux Foundation does. Linux Foundation, I think, operates based off of solely just donations. But I mean, they do have a parent company that Bun is being developed under. I'm not exactly sure what the revenue goals are of the company.
That's what I'd be curious. Where is that money? How are they? Because, that isn't gonna be a big deal for the long term viability.
That's true. That's true. I had a conversation with somebody today where we're talking about what modules to include in your project and stuff. It's like, well, who's supporting that module, right? Can you count on long-term support with the module? What's the licensing for the module?
I know we looked at this and ultimately decided that we would not push this unless it got a pretty significant traction, which it does not. But it's a non-trivial thing for this audition.
Yes. So something else you can also do when it comes to supporting Bun or looking at trying to support Bun. One of the things I suggest doing is if you are planning on running this in production, I would go to their issue tracker on GitHub because it is being developed in open. So you can go and take a look and see what some of the bugs and stuff that people are filing. And so let me do this. Let me go to, I want to go to, I think I have one page here. Let me do this. I'm gonna go to bun.sh. There we go. All right. So if you go to docs and we go down to Node.js compatibility. This is the page where you can go through and you can see what is supported and what's not supported. So the Node cluster API is not implemented yet. Dgram, which is important, it's not supported yet. Node DNS, Node domain. You can see here there's partial support. So I mentioned before that the FS is part of, in other words, they have their own version of FS, but you can see that there's all these methods here that they're missing from the FS module. Says here HTTP is fully implemented here, but HTTP 2 is not fully, it's not supported on the server yet. There's a lot of work that went into Node to get HTTP 2 support added in. The inspector is not implemented. So you can just go through here. I mean, this is just the top of the list. There's a bunch of stuff in here that's not implemented or not completely implemented. And they do have, like, for instance, like on the node test here, they have this, use bun test instead. So that's one part of the demo I did not show. So I have one test in there. It ran the test. All right. Yes.
How would you compare Bun to IOJS?
IOJS? Well, IOJS, for those who don't remember, IOJS was a fork that happened of Node.js because the Node community was not happy with the pace of development. The version of V8 that was in Node was like, I think, one version old or something like that. And so the idea was that they were going to try to accelerate the development of Node.js, and then eventually they merged the Node project and IOJS back into a single repository or a single non-fork of the repo. I think that was one of those things where, you know, everything they were doing was based off of what was you know, the existing, you know, Node, you know, code base. This is different because the goal of the project is really speed. I think that's an important thing to be going after because all the reasons I've discussed earlier when it comes to, like, you know, you're paying for all this stuff. If you're doing cloud hosting, paying is very important, but they've got some work to do before they're fully compatible. But they have based it off of JavaScript core, which is a, you know, essentially it's a Apple project that does not get updated on a frequent basis. V8 is updated every 4 weeks. But I think it's good from a competition standpoint because now there's Deno, now there's Bun, now there's, you know, regular Node.js. And so I think it'll be good having the competition out there. IOJS eventually just merged back into the Node project. This is going to be its own thing. And I personally, I'm a big fan of competition. I think that's going to be important. And there may be some web projects and stuff that kick up where it's like, hey, we're not going to use Node. We'll deal with the issues and stuff with Bun.
If it's just speed though, that's not enough.
Well, they have other stuff in there too. So they have their own APIs.
Yeah, but are they better? Like what? They're different.
Well, I mean,
And they've got some things built in if I am using those technologies.
yes.
Great. But you know how JavaScript ecosystem changes technology in a week. So
That's true.
how are they going to keep up with that? And then those technologies that are built in there are going to be yesterday's news for too long.
I guess as long as they're still funded.
These are just all my questions.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
How do we need to see what comes of all this stuff?
Yeah, so like there's a lot of stuff that's been added to Node lately that I've been very happy with. And one of those things was, like, for instance, like they actually did a real, like, web-based version of the fetch API. And before there was Node Fetch, and you can import that in as a module and use that, but it didn't work exactly the same way as the fetch did in the browser. And so now they have an implementation that works exactly the same way as it does in the browser. And you can write code now, you can write modules that will run in the browser and also, on the server. And so that's the kind of stuff I like to see, is to see that type of compatibility.
I think
And-
it'd be great if like Bun, with their performance focus, like that pressure, resulted in significant performance improvements. in their
Yes,
systems.
yeah,
That'd be an amazing outcome.
absolutely, yeah. So I think that is, that's good. The V8 project itself has gone through a lot of changes since it was started in 2009. And so the reason why it got its, or the name is based off of, a reciprocating engine like you might have in your car. And even though I think almost all companies are abandoning V8 production at this point, but they compiler. So the way it was originally built was it was a compiler, and it would actually take your JavaScript code and compile it into code that would run in the runtime. And over the years, they started making changes to V8 to where it's more of an interpreted. And they've actually found that they could get speed benefits from moving to a more interpreted, which is actually what Microsoft was doing with their JavaScript engine. They originally were using an Edge, I think. Chakra Core, I believe was the name of that engine. So it was an interpreted engine, and it was actually hot swappable inside a node. You could swap V8 for Chakra Core. So I think that's all good. But as far as what they're doing for actually improving the performance and stuff, JavaScript Core is faster than V8, and it'd be nice to see, that whole team, I believe, was outsourced to Germany. This is nothing against Germans, because Germans do make good things, but it's no longer part of that. It's not being developed out of Menlo Park. It's being developed out of someplace in Berlin, and so it's not getting. I don't think it's getting the love that it should be getting from Google and from the other companies that are contributing to it. So, if anybody from Berlin is listening to this tonight, no offense.
No one else has a question. I have something.
Sure.
I just wanted to see if the external would work, if we could maybe try it, that, if you were open to that.
External?
Yeah, so when you go to the build, there's like a flag you can pass it, says external. and then
Okay.
You can give it an empty array and a star. And I can,
It's okay. I can pull it up in the documentation. So if you come here, the bundler,
I don't know if it'll work, that's why I just wanted to try.
here we go.
It would be an external.
Buried in the documentation. Well, we've got this target browser here. That's the default. So here we go. Let's try this. Instead of doing external, let's try doing a target bun and see what happens.
Well, I wasn't gonna, it's not target external, it's just external colon.
I'm just curious to see if this will work. So let's try running this again and see what happens. Huh, look at that. That worked. But you can see this is specifically saying, hey, we're gonna run this. We're gonna run this specifically in bun. So there you go.
Wait, so why did that work? It uses Ovisio, why does saying target bun work there?
Because we're not targeting for the browser, the default is the browser. This is actually targeting, we're saying this is gonna be code that runs on the server, runs specifically with bun. So you can see they also have one here for Node. And this will be a good test here. Let's see what happens if we do this. And try running that again. Right, that also worked. Yeah, it looks about the same too, code wise.
So what you find when you play around with this stuff, that it sometimes builds differently based on like what you're using?
Well, if you're doing, if you're picking different targets. You can see here, there's also an option here for doing splitting and stuff, so. Source maps, I see the external here you were talking about. Let's see what happens if we add that.
Well, if it was below the source map, there's another one called external.
But that's why I just selected, I think. All right, let's try that.
I think this should give you source maps externally.
Let's say I'll take source maps. There we go. There you
I was looking at the one below that.
go. I could have sworn you said external.
Yeah, keep going below minify. There's one called external as well. Keep going down. So this one you specify. like,
Ah.
what library. And then below that, like, let's full page down, there's this star, which you pass it. There, where you just like, give me everything, which probably kills all your performance.
There's always trade-offs to everything, Michael. All right, let's try that. All right, there you go.
Does it show you the build size at all?
We can take a look at that real quick. Do this. Show in Finder, reveal in Finder, here we go. 1.2 megabytes on disk, whereas the original file, the Elysia,
But in this,
yeah, is only 475, 4K on disk. So, of course, it's bundling all this stuff. What it's doing is it's looking at all the modules and stuff that we've imported, and it's bundling that into the file.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. All right. So,
I have a question.
yes,
Can you go back to that documentation with the node compatibility?
absolutely.
APIs?
There we go.
I'm curious if, are these fun implementations of these libraries, or are they pulling in Node as dependencies, so you get these APIs?
I think with so I'd have to go and take a look at the source code, but I think what they're doing in some cases, they are importing in native modules and implementing that with FFI. So there's some parts of Node that are the Node part is actually interesting. If you actually go and look at the Node source code, parts of it are written in C++, but there's also parts that are just written in JavaScript, right? And so I'm sure that, the stuff that's just JavaScript or whatever, they could just, copy over. But if it's a specific native module, they may have to, they may either have to do a completely new implementation of that, or import the, like the crypto stuff. They may have to import that in with DL Open to do that. But I haven't looked at the source code to see how they're implementing all this stuff. But you can go right here and you can take a look and see if there's a specific API that you need to use that's not implemented yet. But you can see they have a fair amount of support for a lot of this stuff here. You can see all the performance stuff is not in there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this evolves over time with Node, and if Bun has to do any work to keep up with any any developments on some of these that Node is doing, to keep them compatible, or if they'll want to.
Yeah, it's they'll be to see how they keep up with that. And it's some of you were saying it's like how well are they gonna be supported going forward? So I'm interested to see. I haven't done away my Node installs yet. I'm still using Node. At least on the server.
Oven is building a serverless hosting NCI environment.
Aha, they are turning a business. So everybody's got their ulterior motives. So last year I did a presentation here on a new programming language called Mojo, which is a superset of Python that runs like essentially it's runs like native code. It's compiled, and there's a company behind it called Modular. Well, Modular essentially is going to be doing the same thing. They're going to be hosting inference for people's AI applications. So they have a whole hosting business. That's how they plan on making money.
Trying to save their own native.
Exactly. Yes.
And they'll probably charge you the same as everybody else, so they're just more margins.
That's tough candy.
All right. Well, that is about all I had. I'll post these slides up on the meetup site, so you can take a look at that. And also, I recorded the video tonight, so I'll also make that available as well. I want to thank everybody for coming out, and most of all, I want to thank Julie and everybody here at Availity for not only hosting us but also providing pizza tonight. Yes, thank you. And I will see you guys. I'll see you guys next month.